Hey, it's the Empire, Geobox Empire, back to boxing. Now, man, Andy Ruiz versus Luis King Kong Ortiz happened, man, and I thought Andy would win by decision, and Ortiz, if he could win it, it'd be by knockout. And man, Andy ended up pulling the decision win with dropping Luis King Kong Ortiz multiple times. Now, I was shocked that Andy was able to drop Ortiz with single shots. You know, if you actually watch the fight, it was right hooks that put Ortiz down multiple times, and it was basically, this fight was basically about who drew blood first, right? And Andy was able to land his shots first, and was able to basically keep the momentum in his favor. Now Ortiz was trying to walk Ruiz down, and it was working. He was outboxing him for a while, but then when he was hurt, he got clipped one time with clean counter shots and inside, and that basically changed the momentum for Luis King Kong Ortiz to basically not be as aggressive. This fight was, what I thought it would be. I thought Ortiz would be able to outbox Andy Ruiz, and he was doing it. But the problem was he got gun shy because he got hurt too early in the fight, and the momentum went to Andy Ruiz, right? This is the first time I've seen Ruiz hit with so much power. Usually the guy, he hurts you via hitting you with a lot of punches, right? When Andy Ruiz fought Chris Arreola, he wasn't hurting Arreola with single shots. It was combinations that really got Arreola, right? But in this Ortiz fight, Andy was able to hit any clean shot he landed on Ortiz, dropped Ortiz, for the most part, So that being said, I didn't expect every shot to hurt Ortiz like that. And I thought it would be really hard for Andy to get a combination on Luis Ortiz, which he really didn't do too much. But like I said, the power shots from Andy Ruiz, the precision from Andy Ruiz, really that's what made the fight in his favor, right? His shots were accurate, they had more umph in them, and they dropped them, right? Now, I remember Andy Ruiz dropping Ortiz 2 times in round 2, and then he dropped him another time in the fight, so with the right hook. So I mean, it was just a lot of momentum in Andy's favor. Now Ortiz was outboxing him, and Andy was more dangerous in the first six rounds of the fight, but after that, Ortiz started finding his range. He started trying to outbox him more. But like I said earlier, Andy, when he would land, it would be bad for Ortiz, and he looked like he's basically hanging on. There's a lot of times in this fight where Andy almost stopped Ortiz a couple times, and while Ortiz, he finished strong around 12, Andy, man, he got a chin, bro. He got a chin. There's never a time in the fight where Andy looked as bad as Ortiz to the point where he looked like he might be stopped. There's times where he got wobbled around 12, Andy Ruiz, that being Luis Ortiz hitting him and hurting him, but he just never really got into his momentum. Now that being said, man, a lot of people are talking about how Luis King Kong Ortiz is old, and I don't think that was the case, man. How about Andy just beat a good fighter and Luis King Kong Ortiz, and give him his credit. A lot of people, I picked Ortiz to win this fight, right? And I'm not going to say that he looked old in this fight, because he didn't look old in the fight. Andy Ruiz just looked that good. He looked that good. My only concern with Andy is, I know he got the knockout with Anthony Joshua the first time around, but he needs to box more, just throw more punches. In this fight, he thought he could just stop Ortiz early, because he had success early hitting him with clean shots, and he basically hurt him so early that he thought, I'm just gonna get this guy out of here. There was not enough just touching Ortiz, just touching him. Ortiz was touching Andy a lot with jabs, moving around the ring, and like I said, Andy did do things great, but it was mostly power shots. There wasn't really too many combinations going on, but that could be just to the fact that Luis Ortiz is a southpaw, and the range is so far away. It's really hard to outbox a southpaw who's southpaw, and the distance is too far. Now, if Ortiz was orthodox, it would have been a different story. Maybe we would have seen Andy Ruiz box more. But all that being said, Andy, he looked good in the fight. They both looked good in the fight. Basically, this fight was basically, like I said earlier, it was who hurt who first, right? So Andy hurt Ortiz first. And it was pretty crazy, because the first knockdown in round 2, that was a clean knockdown. The second one, that wasn't really a knockdown. He sort of just, it was still off balance, and they called it a knockdown, but it really wasn't one. But the fight was a good fight, man. There's a lot of They already lining up Deontay Wilder versus Andy Ruiz fight, and that's gonna be a big one. If you guys didn't know, Deontay Wilder is picking Luis King Kong Ortiz to win this fight. Tyson Fury, he was going for Andy Ruiz for this fight, and there's a story to be told now. Now there's some animosity now between between Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz, because Deontay was going for Ortiz, Tyson Fury was going for Andy. And believe me that when Deontay Wilder and Tyson when Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz fight, sorry about that, Tyson Fury is definitely gonna be rooting for Andy Ruiz for sure. So we're gonna see how this whole thing plays out, man. It brings a lot of just eyes on the sport when champions are rooting for fighters, former champions and champions. Former champion being WBC, former WBC champion Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. They're basically having a battle of words outside the ring, right? And picking different fighters to beat somebody. So that's going to continue with this fight with Andy Ruiz and Deontay Wilder. Now, Deontay Wilder has to fight Robert Helenius first. Man, that is not a cake in the walk. That's not a walk in the park, man. I'm sort of worried about that fight with Deontay Wilder. I think Deontay Wilder just needs a soft touch before he fights someone like an Andy Ruiz. Robert Helenius is not some tune-up guy. He's just not a tune-up kind of fighter. And for Deontay Wilder to fight someone like that when he's planning on fighting Andy Ruiz, that's just that's too many big names back to back, in my opinion. Andy Ruiz is a former, unified champion who had 3 of the 4 titles at heavyweight. To fight someone like Robert Helenius, who completely dismantled and stopped Adam Kunaki, is a very dangerous fight. And what fight was even close? I think Robert Helenius broke Konaki's face or something like that, right? In one of the 2 fights they fought. So Robert Helenius hits extremely hard, and he wasn't even really sitting on punches. He was just outboxing Adam Konaki. So that's gonna be that's really a slept-on fight, man. That's a big fight that no one's really talking about. I really like Robert Helenius too. I'm not sleeping on that guy. He's looked a lot better recently in his fights, especially because when Robert Helenius fought Adam Konaki the first time, he was getting destroyed. Adam Konaki was completely bullying him, destroying him, hitting him with every shot, and then Robert Helenius caught him, and then that was the beginning of the end for Adam Konaki. But the second time around, Robert Helenius beat Adam Konaki so bad, it was just a mismatch. He just beating him, and it wasn't like he was outboxing him bad. He's moving better, outboxing him, using jab, straight right. He only got at one point, he was just letting the kitchen sink go on Adam Konaki. Right, so there's a lot of danger with Adam Konaki and Deontay Wilder, and that's a big one before he gets to Andy. That can go either way. A lot of people are sleeping on it. Now Deontay Wilder has power, obviously, but that whole idea of a boxer, and Deontay Wilder, those things are like oil and water. So can Robert Helenius outbox Deontay Wilder and hit him some clean shots? I think so, man. Or is he gonna try to pull a Tyson Fury and try to bully Deontay Wilder? We don't know. But obviously Deontay Wilder has that right hand and everything, but let's keep it a buck. Deontay Wilder doesn't have that invincibility aura he used to have after that Tyson Fury fight, right? He can lose. He can lose. He can get hurt. He can get hurt. I think his punch resistance definitely went down after all those Tyson Fury fights. There's some shots that Fury hit him with that he should have been able to take, right? I seen an uppercut land from Tyson Fury in round 2 of the 3rd fight, and that hurt Deontay Wilder, and I think he was dropped in round 2. And it looked like a mediocre punch. It didn't look like a heavy punch. So, Deontay Wilder took a lot of punishment in that Tyson Fury fight. Will his chin hold up? We're going to see. Deontay Wilder is known to have a chin though, but those things wear down when you're fighting big dogs. And Robert Helenius is a big dog, man. He's just a big dog. Let's keep it a buck. Much like how Deontay Wilder's chin can go down, Luis Ortiz's chin went down as well when he fought Deontay Wilder twice and got stopped twice. I think his punch resistance definitely went down. These fights are cumulative on these fighters, and they wear and tear your career. That's how a lot of these fighters retire and they start stuttering and everything, because it's not that you didn't win the fight or you couldn't win it or you lost or whatever. It's just over time that shit affects your brain. It affects your brain. You start stuttering, things like that. People can't hear you speak. These are realities. Did Deontay Wilder take 20 punches from Tyson Fury? We're gonna see, man. Now Robert Helenius has been stopped by people like Gerald Washington, so it doesn't take much to knock him out. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe his chin isn't all that it's cracked up to be. But we're gonna see how this whole thing plays out, man. It's a big fight. Andy Ruiz versus Deontay Wilder, if Deontay Wilder can get through Robert Helenius. But that Ortiz Andy fight, man, that was a real interesting fight. I knew it would be a tough fight. I knew that if Andy would win, it would be by decision. And I called it, man. I knew he would win by decision. I thought Ortiz had a knockout chance. He didn't get it done. He did not get it done. He never got warmed up. He never got his feet under him. He never really imposed himself on Andy Ruiz. And the better man won. So anyway, let me know how you guys feel about it, though. Like, comment, subscribe. This is the Empire. Geobasket Empire. Peace. Geobasket.